Earth didn't send diplomats. They sent a dangerous ship, proved prophetic when Hagrak's warships ambushed Council Station Omega. As shields failed and panic spread, Captain Reed's massive judicator surged into position, unleashing precision electromagnetic weapons that surgically disabled the entire attacking fleet without a single casualty. In 10 breathtaking minutes, humanity's controversial approach to peace through strength saved the very assembly that had condemned it. Council Station Omega gleamed like a jewel in the void, its vast crystalline superstructure reflecting the light of Altaris IV's distant sun. The great orbital citadel, flagship of the Interstellar Assembly, had been designed to inspire awe, with its elegant spires and sweeping, transparent observation decks. But today, Ambassador Lyra Xanthi found herself unable to appreciate its beauty as she stood rigidly at the central conference table, her slender Vexian fingers drumming an anxious rhythm. "They're late," Chancellor Quarv growled, his Vorian crest flaring with irritation. The massive, avian-like diplomat towered over Lyra by nearly 2 feet, his ceremonial robes rustling as he paced. "This is precisely what I warned the Council about. Humans cannot be trusted to adhere to even the most basic protocols." Lyra's iridescent skin flickered with blue notes of calm, a diplomatic mask she had perfected over decades of service. "The treaty provides a 6-hour window for arrival. We are only at hour 4, Chancellor." "Their diplomatic shuttle should have been here 2 hours ago," Quarv countered, gesturing toward the empty docking bay visible through the expansive viewport. "Every other species managed to arrive on schedule when they joined the assembly." Tech analyst Sran looked up from his console, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays arrayed before him. "Ambassador, I'm detecting something unusual." Lyra turned, grateful for the interruption. "Define unusual, analyst." "A vessel approaching on an intercept trajectory, but..." Saran's antennae twitched in confusion. "It doesn't match any diplomatic shuttle configurations in our database." Chancellor Quarv swooped to the console, looming over the insectoid technician. "Show me!" The main display flickered to life, revealing a distant object moving steadily toward the station. As the image enhanced, murmurs rippled through the gathered delegates. This was no shuttle. The vessel stretching across the view screen was massive, a sleek, gray behemoth with unmistakable weapon emplacements along its hull. "That," Quarv hissed, "is a warship." Sran's manipulators danced across his interface. Length, approximately 1.8 kilometers. Mass, incalculable without closer scans. Acceleration pattern indicates... The analyst paused, rechecking his readings. "Weaponized propulsion systems. They're approaching at combat speed." The council chamber erupted in alarmed voices, representatives from a dozen worlds talking over one another in panic. Lyra raised her hands, her skin flashing with authority yellow. "We will maintain protocol," she insisted, though her hearts beat rapidly beneath her ceremonial robes. "Earth is a signatory to the First Contact Treaty. They are entitled to representation." "In diplomatic vessels," Quarv squawked, "not aboard warships capable of reducing this station to atoms." Council Leader Voss, a gelatinous entity who normally maintained a humanoid form out of courtesy to bipedal species, was now quivering with agitation. "Activate defense protocols," they ordered. "All non-essential personnel to evacuation zones." "Leader Voss," Lyra objected, "such actions could be perceived as hostile." "As could sending a destroyer to a peace conference," Quarv snapped. The massive vessel continued its approach, now close enough that they could make out insignia emblazoned across its hull. "UES, Judicator." "They're hailing us," Saran announced. Lyra straightened her posture. "On screen." The communication display illuminated with the image of a human male in what appeared to be a military uniform, dark blue with silver insignia at the collar and shoulders. His expression was calm, almost pleasant. but there was a hardness in his eyes that Lyra immediately recognized as that of a seasoned warrior. Council Station Omega. This is Captain Marcus Reed of the United Earthship Judicator. Request permission to dock and disembark diplomatic personnel. Lyra stepped forward before Quarv could interject. Captain Reed, this is Ambassador Lyra Xanthi. We were expecting a diplomatic shuttle, not a vessel of your classification. Reed's expression remained unchanged. Ambassador. Earth sends its regrets about any confusion. The Judicator serves as both our diplomatic carrier and security escort. We look forward to explaining our approach in person. Quarv pushed into the communication field. Your approach includes bringing a heavily armed warship to a peaceful station? This is outrageous. Chancellor, Reed replied, recognition in his eyes. I understand your concern. I assure you our intentions are peaceful. But Earth doesn't send unarmed diplomats into unknown territory. It's not our way. Leader Voss oozed forward. You will be permitted to dock, Captain. A small delegation only. 5 representatives maximum. Your vessel will maintain a distance of no less than 10 kilometers from the station after personnel transfer. Acknowledged. Council Leader. Delegation of 5. Station standoff at 10 kilometers. Reed nodded respectfully. We'll prepare for docking procedures immediately. The communication ended, leaving the council chamber in tense silence. This is unprecedented, one of the junior delegates whispered. Lyra turned to Sran. Scan that vessel again. What kind of weaponry are we dealing with? The analyst worked for several moments before responding. Difficult to determine precisely. Their hull absorbs most of our scanning beams. I detect what appear to be kinetic weapon systems, energy projectors of unknown type, and possible mass drivers. But there's something strange about the configuration. Strange how? Quarv demanded. The weapons appear to be modular, reconfigurable. Saran's antennae drooped in confusion. I've never seen anything like it. Lyra felt a chill run through her. 5 years of peaceful expansion, bringing new worlds into the assembly under protocols of mutual respect and disarmament. And now this, humanity's first official delegation arriving aboard what was essentially a mobile fortress. What do they think this is? Quarv muttered, echoing her thoughts. A war council? Perhaps, Lyra said quietly. They don't see the distinction we do. The diplomatic reception hall had been prepared according to assembly custom. Neutral lighting calibrated to all known species visual ranges. Comfortable seating options for various physiologies. And environmental controls, set to a compromise between the preferences of the dozen primary member worlds. A long table of polished blue stone from Alteris Thurfor's quarries dominated the center. Surrounded by the assembly's symbol of interlocking rings, projected as a hologram above, Lyra stood at the head of the delegation, with Quarv fuming silently beside her and Leader Voss maintaining a carefully neutral form. Various other representatives were arranged behind them, the Serpentine Theracian ambassador, 2 crystalline zenith observers, and several others from the core worlds. The airlock cycled, and Lyra steeled herself for the first face-to-face contact with humanity's representatives. The door slid open to reveal Captain Marcus Reed in person. He was tall for a human, with close-cropped dark hair beginning to gray at the temples and a posture that spoke of military discipline. Behind him stood 4 other humans, 3 males and 1 female, all in similar uniforms though with different insignia and specialized equipment attached to their belts and shoulders. Ambassador Xanthi, Reed said, stepping forward and offering a slight bow. On behalf of United Earth, I bring greetings to the Interstellar Assembly. Lyra performed the traditional greeting gesture of her people, a sweeping motion of her right hand that left a brief trail of bioluminescence in the air. Captain Reed, the Assembly welcomes Earth's delegation. Though I must note, we expected scholars and diplomats, not military personnel. Reed smiled, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. On Earth, Ambassador, we don't make such rigid distinctions. Everyone you see before you has extensive diplomatic training. Commander Alvarez, he gestured to a woman with dark hair pulled tightly back, holds 3 degrees in xenopolitical theory. Lieutenant Park, he indicated a younger man with features suggesting East Asian ancestry, is a linguist specializing in non-human communication paradigms. And yet you all wear uniforms and carry weapons, Quarv observed sharply, his gaze fixed on the devices, holstered at their sides. Standard procedure, Reed replied smoothly. But if our sidearms cause discomfort, we can secure them for the duration of the meetings. Leader Voss undulated slightly. That would be appreciated, Captain. Reed nodded to his team, and they each removed their weapons, sleek devices that appeared to be energy-based, and placed them in a containment case offered by a station security officer. Now, Lyra said, attempting to guide the meeting back to protocol. Perhaps we should begin with the traditional cultural exchange? Each new member world typically shares an artistic or cultural demonstration as a symbol of peaceful intent. Reed exchanged glances with his officers before nodding. We came prepared for this. Commander Alvarez, if you would. The female officer stepped forward, removing her uniform jacket to reveal a fitted black undergarment. The other officers moved to create space around her as she took a position in the center of the reception area. This, Reed explained, is a demonstration of Tai Chi, an ancient earth discipline that harmonizes body and mind. It began as a martial art, but evolved into a practice promoting health and inner peace. Alvarez began a series of slow, flowing movements that were indeed graceful. But to Lyra's trained diplomatic eye, there was no mistaking the martial foundation. Each gesture, while beautiful, clearly represented blocks, strikes, and evasive maneuvers. Several of the delegates shifted uncomfortably as the demonstration continued, the human officer moving with increasing speed until her actions were unmistakably combat-oriented. When she finished, there was a strained silence before Lyra offered a polite acknowledgement. Thank you for sharing this practice with us. Perhaps, Quarv said with barely concealed disdain, the humans would like to see one of our cultural demonstrations now? Something actually peaceful? Before Lyra could intervene, Reed smiled thinly. We would be honored. But first, Lieutenant Khatri has prepared a demonstration of our medical technology, which we believe might be of particular interest to the Assembly. A dark-skinned officer with a medical insignia stepped forward, opening a case he had brought. This is a standard field medical kit used by Earth forces, he explained, removing various devices. We've found that effective medicine is one of the most universal ways to build trust between cultures. Dr. Alana Veris, the station's xenomedical expert, who had been observing quietly from the side, approached with interest. Your portable diagnostic equipment must be quite advanced to function across species. It's adaptive, Khatri explained, activating a handheld scanner that projected holographic anatomical models. But what truly sets our approach apart is our emergency field surgery capabilities. He demonstrated a device that unfolded into a surgical array, complete with micromanipulators and automated systems. This can perform combat surgery in hostile environments, even under fire. Dr. Veris's fascination was evident, but Lyra noticed how several delegates recoiled at the mention of combat surgery. This was supposed to be a demonstration of healing arts, yet the humans couldn't seem to separate their medicine from warfare. Most impressive, Lyra interjected, but perhaps we should proceed to the formal introduction of Earth's diplomatic positions and interests. Reed nodded, recomposing himself into a more formal posture. Of course, Ambassador. Earth seeks membership in the Assembly on terms that recognize our unique approach to interstellar relations. We believe in peaceful cooperation, backed by credible deterrence. Deterrence, Quarv repeated, his crest fully extended now. Is that what you call bringing a warship to a diplomatic station? Reed's expression hardened slightly. Chancellor, with respect, the Judicator is a multi-purpose vessel. Yes, it's armed, as are all our deep space ships. The void is dangerous and unpredictable. The Assembly has maintained peace for decades without militarized vessels, Quarv countered. And we respect that achievement, Reed said. But Earth has a different history. We learned through painful experience that peace is only upheld by the capability and willingness to defend it. The tension in the room was palpable now. Lyra stepped forward, her skin cycling through calming blues and greens in an attempt to diffuse the situation. Perhaps we should adjourn for a brief recess, she suggested. Cultural differences require time for proper contextualization. Reed inclined his head. A wise suggestion, Ambassador. We've presented much to consider. As the delegates began to disperse, Lyra noticed Saran hovering near the entrance, his antennae twitching in the pattern that indicated urgent information. She excused herself and moved swiftly to the analyst's side. What is it? She asked quietly. Long-range sensors have detected anomalies in the asteroid field at the edge of the system, Saran reported, his voice low. Possible ships using the rocks as cover. Lyra felt her secondary heart skip a beat. Identification. Inconclusive, but the drive signatures share characteristics with Hegrax technology. The Hegrax, a species that had rejected Assembly membership, preferring isolation and rumored militarization. If they were hiding in the asteroid belt while Earth's delegation was here, increase sensor sweeps, but quietly, she instructed, and alert station security to stand ready. Say nothing of this to the Earth delegation yet. Sran's compound eyes flickered in acknowledgement before he scuttled away. Lyra turned back to find Captain Reed watching her intently from across the room, his expression unreadable. For a disconcerting moment, she wondered if he somehow knew exactly what she had just learned. The private meeting chamber felt too small with Chancellor Quarv's agitated pacing. His massive form cast shifting shadows across the holographic displays, showing the Judicator in orbit at exactly the 10-kilometer boundary it had been assigned. They must be asked to leave immediately, Quarv insisted, rounding on Lyra. This is not diplomacy. It's intimidation. Lyra's luminescence dimmed with frustration. And what message would that send? That the Assembly fears strength? That we reject new members who don't immediately conform to our expectations? We reject threats, Quarv countered, slamming a taloned hand on the table. And that ship is nothing but a floating threat. Leader Voss, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. The Judicator has maintained its assigned position and taken no aggressive actions. Regardless of our discomfort with its presence, we must acknowledge that fact. For now, Quarv muttered. But what happens when we reject their terms? When we tell them that no, we will not permit armed vessels to operate freely within Assembly space? Will they remain so? Restrained then? Lyra's outer membrane rippled with concern. We don't yet know their terms, Chancellor. Perhaps there's room for compromise. There can be no compromise on our founding principles, Quarv insisted. The separation of diplomatic and military functions is absolute. The door chimed, and Sran entered, his movements quick and agitated. Forgive the interruption, but we have confirmation. 3 vessels hiding in the asteroid field. Hegrax configuration. They've adjusted position twice in the last hour, moving closer to the station's orbit. Voss's form contracted with alarm. Tactical assessment? If they are hostile, they're positioning for an optimal attack vector. Saran replied. Maximum coverage of the station's defensive blind spots. Lyra felt cold realization settling over her. The Hegrax never accepted the legitimacy of our treaty with Earth. They've called it a betrayal of Assembly principles since it was first proposed. You think they'd attack during a diplomatic mission? Quarv asked, his anger momentarily redirected. It would certainly destroy any chance of Earth joining the assembly, Lyra said quietly, especially if human representatives were killed in the process. Voss expanded thoughtfully. We should increase alert status and inform Captain Reed of the potential threat. And give him an excuse to bring his warship closer to the station? Quarv objected. How do we know this isn't some elaborate human ploy? For all we know, they could be working with the Hegrax to engineer a crisis. Lyra's bioluminescence flashed with rare anger. That's paranoid speculation, Chancellor. We have no evidence. The station's alert system suddenly blared to life, cutting her off. Sran's communicator buzzed, and his antennae went rigid as he received information. 2 more vessels just decloaked, he reported, his voice tight with tension. Hegrax cruisers, heavy configuration. They're powering weapons and launching strike craft. Time to intercept, Voss demanded. Minutes at most. Our shields are activating, but... Sran hesitated. Analysis suggests they won't withstand a coordinated assault from vessels of that class. Lyra moved decisively toward the door. We need to evacuate the diplomatic wing and contact the Judicator. If the Hegrax are making their move, we need every advantage. Quarv's crest flattened in resignation. Do it, but monitor the humans closely. I still don't trust their intentions. The main operations center was chaos when they arrived. Displays showing the approaching Hegrax vessels, alarms sounding, and staff from a dozen species working frantically at their stations. On the central viewer, they could see the sleek, predatory forms of Hegrax ships closing rapidly, already launching smaller attack craft. Shields at 80% capacity. A technician called out. Evacuation protocols initiated for civilian sectors. Where is the Earth delegation? Lyra asked, scanning the room. Captain Reed requested access to a secure communication terminal. One of the security officers replied, They're in Communication Bay 3. As if summoned by his name, Reed strode into the operations center, his officers close behind. Gone was the measured diplomat from earlier. This was unmistakably a military commander assessing a tactical situation. Your station is under attack, he stated flatly, moving directly to the central display. Hegrax forces, 5 ships total, including the ones that were hiding in the asteroid field. How did you know about... Quarv began. We've been tracking them since we entered the system, Reed interrupted, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Judicator's sensors are considerably more advanced than your station equipment. And you didn't think to inform us? Lyra asked, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. Reed's gaze met hers directly. We were assessing whether they were a coincidence or a deliberate threat. When they began tactical positioning, I ordered my ship to prepare countermeasures. Your vessel is to maintain its distance, Quarv insisted. Assembly security will handle this incursion. Reed's expression was pitying. Chancellor, with respect, your defensive capabilities are inadequate against that level of firepower. You have minutes before those cruisers are in optimal firing position. As if to punctuate his statement, the station shuddered as the first volley of long-range fire impacted the shields. Shields at 65%, the technician updated, panic edging into their voice. Reed turned to Lyra. Ambassador, I need your authorization to bring the Judicator into defensive position. We can intercept those vessels before they reach optimal firing range. Lyra hesitated, caught between protocol and survival. Another impact rocked the station. Shields at 50%. Multiple hull breaches reported in Sector 7. Ambassador, Reed pressed, his voice urgent but controlled. Every second counts. Lyra looked to Leader Voss, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Do it, she said. Reed immediately activated his communicator. Judicator, this is Reed. Execute Plan Aegis. Authorization Omega-7 Delta. On the main viewer, they watched as the Earth vessel suddenly accelerated, its massive form surging forward with shocking speed for something of its size. The Hegrax vessels, now aware of the new threat, began to adjust their attack vector. but they were clearly surprised by the Judicator's capabilities. "What is your ship doing?" Quarv demanded, as the Judicator positioned itself between the station and the incoming attackers. "Creating a defensive screen," Reed replied, his attention divided between his communicator and the tactical display. "And deploying countermeasures." The Judicator's hull seemed to reconfigure before their eyes, weapon emplacements shifting and rotating to present optimal firing solutions. As the Hegrax vessels came into range, streams of energy lanced out from the Earthship, not in destructive volleys, but in precise, surgical beams that targeted specific systems on each attacking vessel. "Those aren't standard weapons," Saran observed, his analytical mind momentarily overriding his fear. "They're not attempting to destroy the ships. They're disabling them." Indeed, where the beams struck, Hegrax systems went dark. Propulsion, weapons, communications, one by one. Each attacker found itself crippled but intact. The smaller strike craft, now cut off from their command vessels, scattered in disarray. "Precision electromagnetic pulse weapons," Reed explained, a hint of pride in his voice. "Developed specifically for situations where destruction would be politically disadvantageous. We can disable without killing." The operations center fell silent as they watched the Judicator methodically neutralize the Hegrax fleet. What should have been a desperate battle for survival had turned into something approaching a technical demonstration, with the Earth vessel exhibiting capabilities far beyond what any of them had anticipated. In less than 10 minutes, it was over. The Hegrax cruisers drifted powerless, their strike craft either disabled or fleeing the system. The Judicator maintained position, its weapons still deployed, but no longer firing. "All hostile vessels neutralized," Reed reported, as calmly as if he were commenting on the weather. "Judicator reports minimal damage from return fire. We're launching boarding shuttles to secure the Hegrax command ships and retrieve their leadership for questioning." The assembly delegates stared at him in stunned silence. What they had just witnessed defied everything they thought they knew about interstellar combat, or about humans. "You," Quarv finally managed, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "You could have done that to us at any time." Reed turned to face the Chancellor directly. "Yes, we could have, but we didn't, because we came in peace. The Hegrax didn't have the same intention." Lyra found her voice. "Captain Reed, I believe we owe you and your crew our gratitude. Without your intervention, the station would have been destroyed, and with it, any hope for Earth's admission to the Assembly." Reed finished for her. "We're aware of the stakes, Ambassador. That's why we came prepared." "Prepared for war," Quarv muttered, but the accusation had lost its edge. "Prepared for reality," Reed corrected. "On Earth, we have a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. It's not about seeking conflict. It's about ensuring that those who would threaten peace understand the consequences." Leader Voss moved forward, their form now stable and composed. "Captain Reed, the Assembly will need time to process these events and their implications, but know that your actions today will not be forgotten." Reed nodded solemnly. "We understand. If you'll excuse me, I need to coordinate with my boarding teams. The Hegrax leadership may have valuable intelligence about why they chose this moment to attack." As he left with his officers, Lyra exchanged glances with Quarv and Voss. The Chancellor's hostility had been replaced with something approaching wary respect, while Voss seemed deep in thought. "Everything we thought we knew about humans," Lyra said quietly, "has just been called into question." "Perhaps," Voss replied. "That was precisely their intention all along." The conference room was subdued as Captain Reed delivered his report. 12 hours had passed since the attack, and the Judicator had secured all Hegrax vessels, taking their crews into custody. The station had suffered damage to several sectors, but repairs were underway, and casualties had been miraculously light thanks to the Earth vessel's intervention. The Hagrax War Council authorized this attack 3 months ago, Reed explained, displaying intercepted communications on the room's holographic projector. They believed that preventing Earth's admission to the assembly was worth the risk of open conflict. Did they expect to destroy the station entirely? Lyra asked, her skin muted with distress at the thought. That was their primary objective, Reed confirmed, with a secondary goal of eliminating as much of the assembly leadership as possible. They calculated that such a blow would fracture the coalition and create opportunities for Hagrax's expansion. Quarv, who had been uncharacteristically silent, finally spoke. And they assumed your ship would either be destroyed in the attack or would retreat to save itself. A significant miscalculation on their part. Reed agreed. They didn't understand that the Judicator was designed specifically for this type of intervention. Designed for it? Lyra repeated, leaning forward. You anticipated this scenario? Reed's expression was carefully neutral. Ambassador, Earth has been observing the Assembly and its neighbors for longer than you might realize. We identified the Hagrax as a potential threat years ago, and when we intercepted intelligence suggesting they might oppose our membership violently, we prepared accordingly. So the warship wasn't just a cultural statement, Voss mused. It was a calculated response to a specific threat. Both, actually, Reed admitted. Earth believes that transparency about our capabilities prevents miscalculations. The Hagrax might have reconsidered if they had better understood what they were facing. The room fell silent as the delegates absorbed this information. Finally, Lyra rose, her diplomatic training reasserting itself. Captain, the Assembly Council will need to deliberate on recent events and their implications for Earth's membership application. In the meantime, we would be honored if you would continue to provide security assistance during the Hagrax prisoners' processing and transfer. Reed stood as well, inclining his head respectfully. The Judicator and her crew are at your disposal. Ambassador, we came seeking partnership, not dominance. As the meeting adjourned, Lyra found herself walking alongside Reed through the station's curved corridors. Repair crews worked diligently to mend the damage from the attack, and, through the viewports, they could see the Judicator maintaining its protective position near the station. Your ship, Lyra said after a moment. It's not just a warship, is it? Reed smiled slightly. The Judicator is what we call a multi-domain vessel. Yes, it has significant defensive and offensive capabilities. But it also carries diplomatic personnel, scientific laboratories, cultural archives, and humanitarian supplies. It's a representation of what Earth believes is necessary for meaningful interstellar engagement. The integration of all functions, Lyra observed. No separation between the diplomat and the warrior. We find artificial distinctions inefficient and potentially dangerous, Reed explained. The diplomat who cannot defend their position is at the mercy of those who can. The warrior who cannot understand the cultural context of conflict is doomed to create more enemies than allies. They paused at a viewport, looking out at the stars and the sleek form of the Earth vessel, silhouetted against them. Your approach challenges everything the Assembly was founded upon, Lyra said quietly. The strict separation of diplomatic and military functions was meant to prevent the very kind of power projection your ship represents. And yet, Reed replied gently, when that separation left you vulnerable, it was our integration that saved you. Lyra couldn't deny the truth of his words. For all her diplomatic training, for all the Assembly's principles and protocols, none of it would have mattered if the Hagrax attack had succeeded. I believed, she admitted, that true peace could only come through the absolute rejection of force. That once species evolved beyond their violent instincts, war would become obsolete. A noble vision, Reed said, his voice warm with genuine respect. And, perhaps, someday, the reality. But the universe we live in today still contains those who see force as the ultimate arbiter. Ignoring that reality doesn't change it. Lyra's bioluminescence shifted thoughtfully. Your ship disabled the Hegrax vessels without destroying them, without killing their crews. That level of restraint, it wasn't what I expected from a military response. Another Earth principle, Reed explained. Proportional response. We believe that the minimum force necessary to resolve a conflict is not just ethically preferable, but strategically superior. Dead enemies can't become future allies. Before Lyra could respond, her communicator chimed. Leader Voss was requesting her presence in the council chamber. The preliminary deliberations had concluded more quickly than expected. It seems, she said, that events are moving faster than protocol would normally allow. Reed nodded. Crisis has a way of accelerating decision-making, for better or worse. We shall see which it is, Lyra replied, turning toward the council chamber with a new sense of purpose forming within her. The council chamber had been hastily repaired, though evidence of the attack remained in the form of scorched panels and temporary lighting. The full assembly leadership had gathered, representatives from all member worlds arranged in their traditional semicircle, with Leader Voss at the center. Captain Reed and his officers stood before them, their posture formal but relaxed. Lyra took her position beside Voss, noting the changed atmosphere in the room, where before there had been suspicion and hostility toward the humans. Now, there was a complex mixture of wariness, respect, and curiosity. Captain Reed, Voss began, their form rippling slightly as they spoke. The Assembly Council has reached a preliminary decision regarding Earth's application for membership. Reed stood at attention. The United Earth Government awaits your judgment, Leader. The events of the past day have forced us to reconsider many of our assumptions, Voss continued. The Hegrax attack demonstrated vulnerabilities in our security model that cannot be ignored. Simultaneously, your ship's response revealed capabilities and restraint that few of us anticipated. Quarv stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow across the chamber floor. I was mistaken in my assessment of your intentions, Captain. Where I saw aggression, I should have recognized preparation. The Assembly owes you a debt. Reed acknowledged the admission with a respectful nod, but remained silent, waiting for the formal decision. Voss expanded slightly, indicating the importance of what would follow. After extensive deliberation, the Council proposes a new status for Earth within the Assembly framework, not as a standard member bound by all traditional protocols, but as what we are terming an enforcer status ally. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as Voss continued. This status would acknowledge Earth's unique approach to interstellar relations and authorize the deployment of Earth vessels like the Judicator for security operations within Assembly space, particularly in border regions where traditional defensive measures have proven inadequate. Reed's expression remained carefully neutral. And the limitations on the status? Earth vessels would be required to maintain transparency about their capabilities and movements. Voss explained. Joint command protocols would be established for any enforcement actions, and the Assembly Council would retain veto power over military interventions except in cases of immediate threat to human lives or critical infrastructure. Reed considered this for a moment before responding. These terms seem reasonable as a starting framework. Earth has no desire to become an unaccountable military power within Assembly space, only to ensure that threats like the Hegrax cannot exploit perceived weaknesses in the coalition. Lyra stepped forward, her luminescence bright with formal authority. There is one additional provision, Captain. The Assembly requests that Earth establish a training program for selected personnel from member worlds, teaching your integrated approach to diplomacy and security. We recognize that we must evolve our practices if we are to survive in a more complex interstellar environment than we anticipated. For the first time, Reed showed genuine surprise. You want us to train Assembly personnel in Earth combat methods? In your integrated methods, Lyra corrected. The balance you've achieved between force and restraint, between diplomatic insight and tactical capability, It represents an adaptation we now recognize as necessary. Reed exchanged glances with his officers before nodding slowly. Earth would be honored to share our knowledge and techniques, with the understanding that each species will need to adapt them to their own physiologies and cultural contexts. Of course, Voss agreed. Diversity remains the Assembly's greatest strength. We seek to enhance it, not replace it with human standards. Then, Reed said formally, on behalf of United Earth, I accept the proposed terms and status. We look forward to formalizing the arrangement once our respective governments have reviewed the details. The tension that had pervaded the chamber since the humans' arrival finally dissipated. Representatives from various worlds approached Reed and his officers, some offering thanks for their intervention against the Hegrax, others asking questions about Earth culture and technology with new interest. Lyra found herself standing apart, watching the interactions with a mixture of relief and lingering concern. Chancellor Quarv approached, his massive form moving with deliberate care in the crowded chamber. You seem troubled, Ambassador, he observed. Is this not the outcome you desired? I'm not sure what I desired anymore, Lyra admitted, her inner luminescence reflecting her conflicted thoughts. Yesterday I believed in absolute principles. Today, everything seems more complicated. Quarv's crest rippled thoughtfully. The universe has always been complicated. Perhaps we were the ones oversimplifying it with our idealism. Perhaps, Lyra agreed. But I worry about what we're inviting into our midst. The humans restrain themselves this time. But what happens when their interests and ours diverge? We're giving them unprecedented access and authority. True security has always required trust, Quarv said, surprising her with his philosophical turn. And trust always involves risk. But consider the alternative. Continuing as we were, vulnerable to the next Hegrax who decided our peaceful principles, made us an easy target. Lyra watched as Dr. Alana Veris engaged enthusiastically with Lieutenant Khatri, the two of them already deep in discussion about integrating human medical techniques with Assembly healthcare systems. Nearby, other delegates were examining holographic models of the Judicator's modular systems, fascination evident in their various physiological expressions. We're changing, she said quietly. Everything we built is changing. Evolving, Quarv corrected. As all successful species must. The Assembly was founded on the principle of mutual growth through diversity. Perhaps this is simply the next stage of that growth, one we didn't anticipate, but necessary nonetheless. Before Lyra could respond, Captain Reed approached them, having extracted himself from the crowd of curious delegates. Ambassador Xanthi, Chancellor Quarv, he greeted them. I wanted to personally thank you both for your roles in today's outcome. I know neither of you began this process expecting or wanting Earth's participation to take this form. Life rarely conforms to diplomatic protocols, Captain. Lyra replied with a small flicker of humor in her bioluminescence. A lesson I seem to keep relearning. Reed smiled, the expression genuine this time. If it helps, Ambassador, Earth's journey to this moment wasn't straightforward either. Our own history is filled with conflicts between idealism and pragmatism, between hope for peace and preparation for its failure. What you're seeing today is the result of centuries of painful lessons and hard-won wisdom. And yet, Quarv observed, you managed to disable an entire attack fleet without taking a single life. That suggests more than mere military prowess. It reflects our values, Reed said simply. Earth believes that the application of force should always be precise, measured, and aimed at creating the conditions for lasting peace, not merely winning the immediate conflict. Our technology serves that philosophy, not the other way around. Lyra found herself reevaluating the human captain yet again. I misjudged you, Captain Reed. I saw only the warrior and missed the diplomat. As I said before, Ambassador, on Earth, we don't make such distinctions. Each of us is both, in different measure. Reed glanced toward the viewport, where the Judicator maintained its vigilant position. Just like our ship. 3 days later, Lyra stood alone on the observation deck, watching as a joint fleet prepared to escort the captured Hegrax vessels to a secure facility. The Judicator had been joined by ships from 3 other assembly worlds, vessels that would once have kept their distance from the human ship, now maneuvering in close formation with it. The sound of footsteps made her turn. Captain Reed approached, now wearing a modified uniform that incorporated elements of assembly diplomatic dress while maintaining Earth military insignia, a visual representation of the new integration taking place. "The preliminary training program begins tomorrow," he said, coming to stand beside her at the viewport. 20 officers from 12 worlds. Your people learn quickly. Necessity is a powerful motivator, Lyra replied. The Hegrax attack shattered many comfortable illusions. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the ships move in their choreographed patterns against the backdrop of stars. "I've been meaning to ask you something, Captain," Lyra said eventually. "The name of your ship, Judicator, what does it signify on Earth?" Reed considered his answer carefully. In ancient Earth terminology, a Judicator was one who rendered judgment, who decided matters of justice and enforced those decisions. The name was chosen deliberately, as a statement of Earth's intention in interstellar space. "To judge others?" Lyra asked, a note of concern returning to her voice. "No," Reed said firmly. "To establish that there will be consequences for actions that threaten peace and stability. That aggression will be met with appropriate response. That the strong will not be permitted to prey upon the weak simply because they can." Lyra's luminescence shifted with understanding. "A deterrent." "Exactly," Reed nodded. "The most effective weapon is the one you never have to fire, because its very existence prevents conflict from erupting in the first place." Lyra reached into her robes and withdrew a small object, her ceremonial quill pen, a symbol of her diplomatic authority. She had carried it to every negotiation, every treaty signing, every first contact for decades. Now, she held it out to Reed. "In the Vexian tradition, we give gifts to mark new understandings," she explained. "This has been my constant companion throughout my diplomatic career. Now, I find myself setting it aside for something new, something that combines your approach with our traditions." Reed accepted the quill with evident appreciation for its significance. "I'm honored, Ambassador. And what will you carry now, in its place?" Lyra produced a small device, a miniature version of the tactical datapad Reed's officers used. "Your Lieutenant Park has been helping me understand Earth's integrated approach. I have much to learn, but I believe it begins with acknowledging that true diplomacy must sometimes be backed by more than words." Reed smiled. "And true security must be guided by more than tactical advantage. The integration works both ways, Ambassador." As they watched, the fleet began to move out of orbit, the Judicator taking point position. Its massive form gleamed in the starlight, no longer an object of fear, but a symbol of a new understanding, one that acknowledged the complex reality of the cosmos while still striving for the peace that all intelligent beings desired. "Earth didn't send diplomats," Lyra murmured, echoing Quarv's initial accusation. "They sent something more valuable, a lesson in how the universe actually works. And the Assembly taught us something equally valuable," Reed replied. "That principles need not be abandoned simply because they must sometimes be defended. Between us, perhaps we can build something stronger than either of us could alone." The Earthship's engines flared as it accelerated smoothly away from the station, the assembly vessels matching its course and speed in perfect formation. Different designs, different philosophies, but moving now with common purpose. As Lyra watched them vanish into the depths of space, she felt her perspective shifting one final time. The universe remained dangerous and unpredictable. Peace was still fragile, still requiring constant attention and care. But now, at least, they faced that reality with clear eyes and new allies, ones who understood that the path to lasting harmony sometimes required the capability and willingness to take a stand against those who would threaten it. Earth hadn't sent diplomats. They had sent something far more powerful, a new way forward.